Noting the time and the could you please turn? Is it?
Is yours on mute? Turn off your mic on your.
My mine's muted. It says, am I unmuted?
Okay.
It's kind of funny, you didn't hear you say no audio. All right. Noticing the time and in presence of a quorum, I now call the Finance Committee to order, to meet, I guess, whatever we're doing. We're meeting. And public comments?
Hello, good evening. I'm just taking a moment to formally introduce myself. I'm Lisa Adil. I'm one of the school committee members, and I will now be serving as your alternate liaison to Finance Committee. Hello. And happy to answer any questions.
We may need you when we talk about the school committee meeting and right after we. Did anybody have a chance to look at the minutes that I sent around today? All right. You want to hold them for the next meeting and let's, or do,
Or you want to review them on our phones right now? That's another option.
there's a lot of them. I don't think we want to watch people review them.
Okay.
Steve, did you see any material edits when you went through them?
Microphone. Steve, mic. Microphone.
I was wondering who Mike was. I didn't see anything, but like I said, mostly I read what I supposedly said and found that to be accurate.
All right, so I'll hold the minute approval until our next meeting. Everybody has them, so I would say bring your comments to the next meeting or edits, and we'll try to do it efficiently. That brings me to our next agenda item, which is really to just talk about the meeting that happened on Thursday. So I'm looking at Greg and Christy to see which one wants to lead the charge there.
So Thursday's meeting of the Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee had several parts to it. One part was one of the assistant superintendents talking about the special education program, but the vast majority of the meeting, well over an hour, was about 50 people, mostly parents, but some teachers and one student talking about the two options that we're down to. And this may not do justice to the process that people are going through, but let me give it the best description I can share. If there is a grieving process, according to Kubler-Ross, a lot of parents have moved beyond denial and are in either anger or negotiation, which are the second and the third stage. One or two are in the depressed stage, which is stage 4, and almost nobody has reached acceptance, which is stage 5. So we're at a very fraught emotional point, and if you're into the argument over the two options that remain, it's gut-wrenching. You're talking about, what are my kids going to do next fall? Who are they going to be with their friends? There's a lot of uncertainty being worked through. If you step back a few steps to where we are, one of the things that interests me is the fact that the financial impact of either option 4 or option 5V2 is identical. In other words, from how much money are we going to save? And I was expecting there's going to be an expensive one and a less expensive one. It turns out both of them cut about $1.87 million off of what they need or they've used in the past. They're going from 3 to 4 buildings, or going from 4 buildings to 3, and the building that has been identified is going to be surplus is Conant. Yeah?
Could you please remind us all what 4 and 5V2 are?
Oh, sure. I'll get into each one of them. But what I want to basically say is both versions are going to eliminate 11 classroom sections, which turns into 11 classroom teachers, 7 general education assistants, 4 unified arts specialists, 1 instructional coach. So 23 FTEs get cut no matter what is selected. And so financially, this isn't a financial trade-off. Yes.
I'm sorry, I was not able to watch this meeting. When the consultants in AB Forward were discussing this, it was not about what's the one-year benefit, it's about the benefit going forward. Were those finances discussed?
No, not yet.
Okay, because there was a significant difference.
Between
the two models at that level.
There is a significant difference of opinion, but no numbers yet. So let me then get into option 4 versus option 5V2. Option 4 is called, for lack of a better term, and there is some debate over the terminology of how you categorize option 4, but it's being called a targeted school merger. And basically it concentrates the displacement of a couple of communities of 826 students who are currently either in the Conant or the Miriam communities. And that's one way to go. The other way to go is option 5V2. It's called, for lack of a better term, systemic equitable disruption. And what that means is they're going to reorganize all of the Acton schools, not just Conant and Miriam, and to a lesser extent McCarthy Town, but basically say all of the schools that are in Acton today will end up getting impacted one way or another, and they're going to move some things, the specific things that people could identify and talk about were the special education programs, because they will go one place or another. But for the students, there will be a band of K to 3 in the Boardwalk School. There will be a band of 4 to 6 in the Boardwalk School. There will be a K to 3 band in the Parker Damon Building. There will be a K to 4 band in the Parker Damon Building. And the Blanchard School will pretty much stay as it is. And interestingly, there's about, give or take, 100 students from Boxborough who go to Acton schools and about 100 kids from Acton who go to Boxborough schools. And so I'm not quite sure how that sorts out. But most of the discussion Thursday night was focused on what are these two different trade-offs? And there are pros and cons, but the debate is centering now on the initial disruption. Do you concentrate it in a couple of schools and less so in a couple of others? Do you spread it out equitably across the whole system? And then that brings us to, so what do the educators want? And it turns out the leadership team, which includes Peter Light, but also the principals of the various schools, basically said, if it were up to us, and you've asked us to try to cobble this one together, we'd take 5v2. We'd rather be creating something new because it will give us long-term, and this gets the question of beyond the initial, there will be change. It gives us more flexibility. And I think that's the thing that the Finance Committee really wants to be clear about, because no matter what they do, this is not the last step. I got to believe a year from now, we're going to be facing crunch time. And a year after that, we will be facing more crunch time. And so reorganization is a critical first step. And yes, it's going to be budget neutral, whether they zig or they zag. But down the road, I don't know that money is going to start pouring in from the state or the feds, or suddenly the business community is going to increase its contribution to property taxes beyond a percentage point or two. And so we're going to continue to deal with stresses on the system going forward. And that's then where a whole lot of questions came out from the school committee members who were discussing this in some cases for the first time, because up to now, much of the discussion was being held with the AB Forward Steering Committee, which had a few school committee members, but not a majority. They've been listening to parents, but we got basically the school committee members doing their first and second cycle of, so what do you think? And their final vote is coming up on January 22nd. And they were asking the superintendent for the kind of financial information that you just mentioned, which is, okay, we know what the short-term number is. You talk about flexibility going forward. Can you give us an idea of what that will look like? And so my guess is that by the next school committee meeting, probably in the packet that will go out, beforehand, will be that analysis. And that's then when, well, let me give you just one sample of one issue that hasn't been addressed. If we go from 6 schools to 5, and we go from 6 principals to 5 principals, which one doesn't get a chair at the table? We don't know. Yeah? Well, so there's a whole lot of personnel decisions that will have to be sorted out. So there are school assignment decisions to be made. In other words, who's going to what school next fall? There are teacher assignment. Okay, if you've been teaching 4th grade for 5 years in this school, but you're now going to move to a different building, where are you in the pecking order? And if we're going to be eliminating 23 FTEs, who are they? So that there's still hard decisions to come. But the shape of this is such that the school committee is wrestling with 2 different educational approaches. One is, they call, for lack of a better term, continuity. It's like what we're doing, but with 5 schools instead of 6. The other one is we're going to do something brand new across the whole system. And that's a tough educational call.
Thank you, Greg. Christy, since you're our other liaison, I'd like you to add or whatever you want to add, and then we'll just have a little circle.
Like I said, I wasn't able to attend this. I'm disappointed that the discussion did not include the financials of the two models because they are significantly different from the research thing. The group before AB Forward, the steering committee before, it became very clear that the problem we had was that when you have a school with 3 or 4 sections for a grade, you cannot adjust that. You cannot, if you need to save money, cut a section of the 3rd grade because you would just balloon the other size. So the point was that if you make the schools bigger, where you have more sections, that is feasible. So it's really 100% clear to me that 5V2 is the financially feasible way going forward. And what we're looking at with the two models is simply, do you take this painful hit of $2 million, which we'd have to take because we have to close one of the schools, and then do you set us up for more flexibility going forward or not? To me, that's a clear, from the financial perspective. We're not talking about any of the how you get there and all of the other difficulties. There are other things they have to talk to also about discussion about where the people are allocated. Do we switch to neighborhood schools? Or is it a lottery again? How does that change busing? I cannot believe, again, from the previous consultant that we can save much with changing busing. It sounds like we're pretty much as tight as we can be. And that, again, in that situation, the lottery is what made us have the most efficient allocation across schools. And again, even more than that, they're not talking about educational philosophy. Do we maintain the same philosophy across all the schools? Because the reason people choose different schools right now is, in part, because of the educational philosophy. But that doesn't come into the cost, hopefully.
Let me just add on the buses. There is a savings, but it turns out 85% is reimbursed by the state. So the hit to Acton is the 15%, and then when you start looking at the savings, it's not in the magnitude of numbers that should sway you one way or the other. When it was asked, so what's the benefit of one option versus another in terms of how the buses would run, the biggest benefit turns out to be time. Because in a neighborhood option, you're picking up kids from roughly the same area, therefore the trip is shorter. But that doesn't necessarily impact cost in a way that they had a measurable number for. So again, there were discussions about estimates, but at the end of the day, you have basically an argument for flexibility. And I think that's a persuasive argument financially because I don't think we're out of the woods yet. And this is not a one-year blip that, okay, we make some cuts and we don't have to worry about this again in the future. My guess is that we're going to be facing these kind of questions for years.
All right, thank you, Greg. Do you have any other thoughts, Chrissy, before we go around? Corinne, do you have any thoughts that you want to share? Or?
I always have thoughts about the schools. I'll say it's a huge pet peeve of mine. When the cost of transportation is dismissed because it's reimbursed, it is still taxpayer money. And even if it's coming from the state, we should be trying to minimize the cost, period. And yeah, I heard one of the school committee members during that meeting refer to it as free. It's, we all pay a lot of taxes, and we pay them to the state too, and we should be trying to minimize wherever we can. I agree 100% with Chrissy. The whole reason we're in this discussion is because of finances. And like the option that gives us the most flexibility to adjust sections is, to me, the only serious option.
Do you have any comments you want to make?
I did submit a comment to the committee asking if they could provide any information about projected implementation costs. Because, you know, to move the Conant School to a new building, okay, maybe that's a couple moving trucks, right? And then to consolidate Merriman McCarthy Town, maybe there are no moving trucks, right? So we know what that cost looks like, but to completely reorganize all of the schools, that's a cost that we have to, it has to be factored in this summer right? So we have to know how much that's going to cost. I'm not saying that should necessarily change what we ultimately decide, but it's information we need. So I'm hoping we get that at some point. Yeah.
Steve, do you have anything? Christie?
I think it's important to all remember that this is purely a school committee decision. They will be making it the January 22nd. They don't need to give us any information unless we're going to potentially threaten to not support the school budget. I know they're talking about if they decide to go with the neighborhood routes, the neighborhood district, that's going to require hiring a consultant, which is another chunk of money to have happen different, because it's so different from what we currently have.
All right, let's, go ahead, Steve.
Just to follow up on Allison's, but if there are differing one-time costs, I'd like to know where the money's coming from, because they're going to spend it in a few months. And I haven't been all that close to this whole process, though I did sit through almost all of that meeting. And from my reading of the background material, the recurring savings are around $1.7, $1.8 million a year in both cases, which I find remarkably coincidental, but that's okay. Which, by my rough calculation, that's 1.5% of the total school budget. So, again, doing figures in our head, if they were, last year they were escalating their costs at 5.6%, then we're talking about getting it down to 4%, absent any other disasters like we had on health insurance a few years ago. Well, 4%'s not, it's way better than what we're looking at, but it's still not necessarily where we would need to be to keep up with our revenue, which is more like 3%. So, yeah, I agree with Greg that this is not the end of it. And that leads me to two different scenarios. Well, if it's not the end of it, then maybe we ought to go with the least impactful, because we're going to have another one before we know it. Whereas my personality is more inclined to, oh no, just rip the Band-Aid off all at once and get it done, which would be my preference. Now, I'm talking almost in complete ignorance of the topic, and I do not envy the school committee the decision they have to make. However, I am concerned about the time frame for this. I like quick transitions, turnovers, because I hate ones that linger for years. On the other hand, the risk of project mishaps, failures, increases dramatically with the speed with which you try and pull it off. And I don't know what the school administration has been doing in the background in terms of preparing to implement one or the other. Maybe they've got a very well sorted out plan for both options. But I'm very concerned about the speed with which they're going to have to work this through. Essentially, they're going to be ready before September. They're going to be telling kids and teachers where they're going probably by the 1st of August. And that doesn't seem far away.
To your point, Steve, this is one of the reasons I'm curious about implementation costs, because if it's going to be so expensive that we couldn't afford to do it all at once, then there may need to be a plan to do it in pieces, right? And then maybe we have to think more realistically about what we can afford for implementation and whether it's even feasible to accomplish it in 6 months, January, 7 months, I don't know.
Welcome, Alex. I'll give you a second to take a breath, but I'll come to you in 2 seconds to see if you have any comments about the school meeting. It's okay if you don't. Some people didn't have comments. But the only thing to add to your thought, Allison, is I wonder if maybe they're not having to move everything out of Conant. If there's less students in the existing schools, then maybe they can sell some of the stuff instead of moving, but I have no idea. Before I finish my thoughts, I want to give Alex a chance. If you don't want to say anything, it's fine. You're passing. So, Roland?
I think if you're going to do it all at once, because if you break it up into chunks, as, you know, it lingers on, and then your cost savings from doing this is going to come out a lot slower as well. You're not going to get that savings, you know, so if you do it all at once, then you're going to start realizing the savings right away. Otherwise, you do it, it's a slow ramp up to the savings. So then, in theory, your implementation costs would be more because it takes longer, whatever, prevailing wage, et cetera. And then your savings take longer, so the net result is more cost. So that's my only, you know, concern on that. And I think, you know, as Steve said, just rip the Band-Aid off and do it. I mean, it's pretty much, it's going to stink for the people that are not going to have a job. And I get that. I've been in that situation in my career before. So, and I feel for it. So there's a lot of tough decisions that still have to be made, even when they decide on what they're going to do.
To Allison's point, and to drag us down a rat hole, mostly to Allison's point, if it costs a lot to do this, we can't just rip the Band-Aid off. This is what we're looking at with the DPW. We can't just build the DPW that will solve the problems because we can't afford it up front. So I think there is a question of that. That said, we don't get a choice about it.
Our school committee liaison, is there anything, you're welcome to say something now if you feel like you've heard something you want to correct, adjust, comment on. Your mic is yours.
There was a mention about implementation cost, and I just wanted to remind the Finance Committee that the school committee or the school district has something equivalent to the free cash where there could be, you know, money pushed over to do something like that. So I think that was one thing mentioned. And there was something else mentioned, but I completely blanked on it. Now I'll circle back if I remember. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you. Go ahead, Greg.
I don't know if you share my observation, but listening to the parents, I heard two camps. Listening to the teachers, I heard a plea for support. But the voice that surprised me was the student. Now, I think she was 15. And I think she said, by the time I got to junior high and high, which elementary school was an issue because they typecast us. Oh, you're that kind of student. And if that is true, if that is an issue, then that's probably a problem we want to solve, and the way to solve it is probably 5v2.
I can only comment as myself and not speak on anyone's behalf and how that was received, but I do remember the particular comment that you were referencing. There was a student who was 15 years old who is a sophomore and came up and spoke and talked about the fact that the labels from the different elementary schools stuck with students later on. And one of the, if I could summarize her statement, I would just say that it was in reference to the fact that there's enough labels in high school and in junior high to deal with as it is. There's enough things that they have to go through, you know, as they're interacting with their peers, that was just kind of one more layer that many of them wish to be abolished or see abolished. So, but that was her perspective, and I personally found it compelling, but again, I cannot speak for anyone else, only as an individual.
Lisa, I have one thing, one request. Since we have two apparent same financial impacts, I think my request would be that at the ALG meeting at the end of January, that Peter Light put into his multi-year financial model the projected savings of, since they're same underneath both scenarios, and run that out. And I believe he's already changed his health insurance assumption to run it all the way out to, David, is it 2031 or 2032, the ALG model? 2032, run it all the way out to 2032. So that when, as a committee, we review the revised multi-year financial plan and the ALG model, we have what is perceived to be the best and most accurate projection that the school has.
I would be very happy to pass that along and encourage them to do their best to be able to do that, and especially as it seems that there are more numbers to be, calculated and considered, and for them to kind of figure out. So I think I don't have those numbers. We don't have those numbers yet. Yeah.
And I understand it won't be perfect, but at least we can, it would be better than us trying to guess ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah.
And thank you very much. If you have anything else, all right. As a committee, I feel like since we have the financial impacts, I know there's obviously a lot of opinions on this, but our primary objective is the financial model. So if we have a known financial impact on basically both of them, I don't feel like this holds us back on moving forward on, what we're looking at for numbers. I appreciate Steve doing a swag on the financial impact going out in time, and I think when we get the revised ALG model in a couple weeks, I think that's going to give us, we can sanitize that, look at that, and see if we have any issues with it. But I think that would give us a better idea of the long-term impact on the town. So that's all I have on this right now. I think, David, you're welcome to speak.
Two things. First, very quick, I believe so I'm Select Board Liaison to the school committee, so I'm at almost every school committee meeting. My understanding is that the moving costs, if you will, are mostly going to be handled in-house, right? There will be a truck firm hired to move the stuff out of Conant, but most of the moving around in the buildings is going to be handled in-house. That's my understanding. Second, I just wanted to talk about the cuts in a way that I think of them, and if it helps you guys, you can. So we have somewhere between a $2 and $3 million problem for that have the schools fit in, and we're really solving that in three ways. One is both towns are now funding the schools above 3%. That's part of that, or above 2.5 if you want. The limits of Proposition 2.5. Second is, going forward, there are efficiencies in the new system, especially 5v2, and the efficiencies or sustainability in 5v2 you should not be sneezed at. I mean, some people say, well, it doesn't completely solve the problem. That doesn't mean that over $1 million is nothing. $1 million a year is nothing, right? So to me, that's okay. Just because it doesn't completely solve the problem by itself doesn't mean that it's not significant. And the third thing, and the reason why it's not a coincidence that the first year things are the same, is they had to cut to fit in the budgets that we have this year. Mostly this year, limited by Boxborough not having an override. Also Acton, but a little bit more this year, Boxborough not having an override. So the fact that the number of sections that they have to cut to fit this year is the same for both, and that's not a coincidence. That's to make it fit. I will say, though, that consolidation that they have to do is easier because of this change, right? If we were not getting rid of the Conant School this year, they'd be cutting existing sections out of existing schools, right? There would be, you had the counts, Greg. They'd be cutting classroom sections out of existing schools. In this school consolidation, they consolidate the classrooms to the number of teachers that they have. And so the class sizes go up by a couple. I think Lisa knows the exact numbers. They go up like by 2 or something like that. And so that's why it, again, it's not a coincidence that they're the same this year. But I also don't want you guys to underestimate the efficiencies moving forward. And they've talked about those, and I think Christy saw those, in the previous meetings that she was at. There's significant savings in future years, but just because they don't solve the whole problem doesn't mean that they're nothing.
Thank you, David.
I'm sorry, I have one question. The $1.8 million in savings that they're talking about, is that the 23 FTEs, or is that the cost of maintaining the Conant building, or both, all of it?
Conant building was 100,000.
Yeah, the Conant building is a cost that we don't spend because we don't need to renovate it. Oh, sorry.
It's a result of the reduction in force. So that's where that cost is, and that's why it's equivalent, because either way, there'd have to be a reduction in force. But the difference between the two models, has been clearly pointed out, is the flexibility and how that's done, and how the impact is mitigated through the organization and flexibility of that.
Since you're at the microphone, where we stand on the teachers' contracts?
So right now, negotiations is still happening, and is your question in terms of the progress, or if we think we're going to finish by the end of the year, or do you mean how reduction force occurs?
None of those. I haven't paid attention in the last couple of weeks. I mentally shut off around the holidays, and I just haven't heard anything. So since you're up there, I just was curious. If they're still ongoing, then they're still ongoing. That's a sufficient update. I just didn't know.
Oh, yes.
If it was done and I didn't know, I was trying to find out.
Oh, no, and I apologize for not understanding what you were asking.
That was
No,
very
I am
simple.
on the negotiations subcommittee also, and that's still ongoing and planning. That's scheduled out all the way to May, and so we'll see what happens there.
All right. Any other questions on the schools? Steve does.
More of a comment. Of the 50 or so people that spoke at the meeting, most were well-versed with what was going on and had an opinion one way or the other, but there were a few that seemed surprised by all this. And given the outreach that has gone on for the past couple of years, I was surprised that any parent in town would not have heard what was going on and had some understanding. And I bring it up to point out just how difficult it is to get the word out in this town about anything.
Real quick. So I think, quote, all parents knew that AB Forward was going on. Some parents heard through the grapevine, whatever you want to call it, misinformation that said, oh, if you're at the boardwalk school, you're okay. And so this was mostly initially a Conant school, and then a Conant McCarthy Town Miriam school, and it wasn't until near when we went from 4 options to 2 options that it was like, oh, wait a second, there's an option here that will affect everybody. And so it's not that they weren't aware, it's they hadn't attached, oh, this is what this means to me yet.
All right, thank you.
May I just add to that? Okay, and just to echo your same thoughts, that's exactly what happened. And I think when those enrollment options came out, that was, I think, when more people became involved, because I think the people who initially felt, in their words, targeted, McCarthy Town, Conant, and Miriam, those were the people that were more present in the process towards the beginning, because I think the enrollment options allowed people to realize that there would be a higher level of involvement. Quick thing also on talking about initial costs and expenses, that was the thing I wanted to circle back to. Peter Light, or it was somebody else that did talk about being able to use the furniture from Conant and the plans to use all of those lunch tables to be brought over to the other schools. So I just wanted to mention that that was already being considered and thought of as a potential expense, or in this case, the lack thereof.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next topic unless anybody has any other needs to talk about this. I'm not going to really talk about the point of view tonight. Town manager did a budget overview that we attended last night, and the request was to get questions in for the budget meetings next week, by Friday this week. And just to be respectful of getting information communicated, if you have questions, you can, I'd say, email them directly to me. What I'd like to do is send an email communication to the town manager on Friday morning and not Friday end of day, because he's going to want, Monday's a holiday, and he's going to want to communicate questions to the people they are directed to give them time to respond to them. And sending it at the end of Friday is like giving it to them on Tuesday. So I'd like to.
They also close at 12:30 on
And,
Friday.
well, he works past 12, but
Yes, but
yeah,
everyone else.
but yeah, the rest of the staff is gone. So if you have questions, I don't care what time on Thursday, send them to me. What I will do is I will aggregate the questions. If I see repetitive questions, I will just, work with that, and I will, I don't think I can communicate, send them directly to me, I'll send them to the town manager, and then I will share at the start of the meeting, like all the questions that, were submitted. Christie?
This seems like a ridiculously short turnaround that we're being asked for. Am I correct in thinking that it's been longer than this in previous years? I do not personally have time the next 4 days to go line by line through the budget that I have done every other year and get this. Steve, am I misremembering?
Oh, no, you remember it correctly, but because of the change in the way for preparing for town meeting.
That's not
happened,
acceptable.
We used to get them just before Christmas and have to have the answers in by the new first of the year. So we had more time, but we were all busy doing something else. But this is short.
Okay, I would like to request our chair to, at the next ALG meeting or on the sideline to the select board, as the boss of the town manager, respectfully give us information to us sooner. We have had it in the past, and if we're going to do a sufficient job advising on this process, we need more than 4 days when we all have jobs and other things going on in which to read this budget. This is a committee of people who especially are, have daytime plans that do not allow them to spend the time with us.
I would echo your comment, Chrissy, because I've taken 5 vacation days just to do this work. Because I can't do this in my day job. Alex?
In the meantime, we could block and tackle it so we don't all have to look at the entire thing. I mean, it's an option since we're short on time.
Yeah,
Throwing it out there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know if we collectively know what we want to look at. I think everybody's going to kind of look at it their own way.
Just throwing it out there.
No, I appreciate that.
No, I get it. I mean, day jobs and long travel.
So what's happened in the past with past chairs, myself included, is questions are funneled through you, right? You just tally them, so if there's 3 questions on the same thing, so we're not sending 3 different questions of the same thing to the town manager, right? Or whoever it has to go to. And then you just kind of consolidate them and then send them in for what we have. And you did say, just ask when we're in the budget meeting, right? And I'm looking over this, like I have one right here, replace 2015 F-250 for facilities. Well, how many miles are on it? Is it a lot? Have you're talking 65 grand. There's a lot of good used ones on the market too that have low miles that are certified pre-owned, and you could probably get it for less than 65 grand. I do know how expensive pickup trucks are, believe me, right now. It's outrageous. So that's the type of thing I kind of wonder. Is it, how many do we have in our fleet? I guess that's the other question I don't really have the answer to. And I know you've asked that question in regards to the storage, right, in the proposed building. So I think that's one of my questions, just on that alone. I did have questions on the software. Are we leasing it? Are we buying it? Et cetera. Another thing, too, is I'd like to see on the school side is how much does it cost to send, so we have Minuteman, which comes out of the municipal side. And then we send kids to the charter school that comes out of the school side. How much does it cost per student to go to the charter school? And how many other out-of-district schools do we, and how many students? I don't need to know who they are. Obviously, you can't do that, but how many are we sending to other schools, and how much is that impacting the budget as well? And I think those things are kind of, gives us more insight to the budget, right? I mean, I don't know how much it is to charter school, but I guess it must be a pretty good chunk of money. And I, from what I understand, and Lisa might be able to answer that question, I thought we had somewhere around 60 students going there. Our enrollment next year at Minuteman's down. The freshman class is down for the number of students from Acton than it was from the year before. So, or from the seniors that are graduating this year, our enrollment's going to end up being down next year. So, I guess there's some things that we need to understand. The software, is it leased or are we buying it? Is there any other IT hardware, whether it be laptops, desktops, that need replacement? And are we buying versus leasing? Because I know on the corporate side of it is we have the laptops, but every 3 years they're replaced. We lease them. We don't buy them because the technology changes so much.
When do you want questions by?
Midnight on Thursday.
Midnight on Thursday, okay.
Outside of the questions, I put this slide up in the point of view deck because part of the objective of the point of view is to advise on items coming to town meeting. I feel like the stormwater, I feel like the Finance Committee had an opinion on that. That was very unanimous at our last meeting. In that we did not want to see that as a separate fee. And I didn't know if we wanted to do a quick discussion, and Christie?
I was confused by this last time Mr. Mangiarotti was here. I thought he said that this was a fee already. And when it was presented to us by the RAC, it was presented as the idea of a new fee. David, please clarify, do we have a fee right now?
There is a stormwater fee for commercial properties, but not for residential properties.
So the idea here would be to add it for everyone?
Right, and the stormwater fee, if we do it at this year's town meeting, which I don't know, we haven't voted on that or anything yet, would be a separate article. It's not part of the budget. It would not affect this year's allocations. We have a very small number of, I think, $100,000 worth of stormwater work this year, which is an extremely small number by normal years. So anyway, it's possible it may happen, but it would be a separate discussion for you guys. Also, we have these 2 budget nights, so you guys, it's pretty efficient to ask questions and have a little back and forth. If there are any questions after, we'll certainly field them, right? We don't transmit the budget to you guys for another 40 days. And so after that 40 days, I think we can't really futz with it much. I don't know exactly what the rules are, but.
Limited futz.
Limited futzing. But between now and the time we transmit it to the Finance Committee, it's, we'll do our best to answer any queries or tweak something or if it needs tweaking.
If I may, while you're still up there, David, I was surprised to see that stormwater was probably the biggest hit taken in terms of what was proposed by the department heads and what wound up in the capital budget, which unfortunately I think is a pattern that's gone on for too many years. Any insight you might have would be helpful.
So we asked, the select board asked the manager to meet a 3.25% budget. He came back with his recommendations, we talked about them, and they were adjusted a little bit, but we ended up there. And one of the reasons for that is we have a number of we have allocated stormwater money in the past couple of years. We have not finished spending all that. Some projects that definitely have been started, and so we're not coming to a dead halt, right? And also, that $100,000 is enough for a couple of really small projects. And so those smaller kind of projects we do mostly in-house. The six-figure projects usually have some contracting out.
Okay, thank you.
Dave, you might just want to hang up there, because I just want to bounce through these three subjects. I'm sure you're going to have an opinion on all three of them. Or you might want, if you want to sit down, you can do it. So on the DPW, I'm calling it feasibility. I don't think that's an exact terminology for it, but it's going to be money to be allocated or presented at town meeting to work on the building design. I asked the town manager last night that I wanted the invoice details from Weston Sampson and from Arrow Street to show how the money was spent on the initial feasibility study, and then the, whatever they call it. Yeah, however they call it, because I feel like seeing that detail is going to help us understand this number that's presented. So myself personally, I want to hold on opinions on this until we have more information. I don't know if anybody has any comments on it. If there isn't, I'll just move on. Comments? No. All right.
I would just add that to your list of questions, even though it's not directly the budget, just to make sure that it doesn't get lost.
I will.
It's
It'll be bolded in the first couple
Friday
lines.
morning
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah, I asked it directly, and I'm going to write it as well. This building HVAC renovation, I asked the town manager last night, what would be the impact if this was turned down at town meeting, considering that the town got $1 million grant. And I know we don't have, I know we have to do, because if we're a green town, we have to do all this electrification of things, and that, just fixing the existing system, whatever the cost is for that, we don't have that number, right? We never got that, right? No. It's easy to estimate that, I think, I'm not going to say that. What I did ask him was, what would be the impact if this is turned down? And he said it would be a very negative impact for the town if, we get $1 million grant and then we don't use it, basically, or the town turns it down. So, yeah, so I'm not sure how these grants work, but I wanted to ask that question last night because I don't know. Is this for individual projects, David? Have we received $1 million grant for a project that's $4 million before?
No, I'm not aware. I'm sure at some point we've received $1 million grant, but they're pretty uncommon.
To get 25% of the cost covered by a grant?
This grant is because we're a climate leader community, and we've satisfied a number of requirements in order to be a climate leader community. We're one of the 19 communities in the Commonwealth that's a common climate leader community. So that gives us the option to use these funds. And as the town manager says, we would, as far as he knows, we would lose the grant and we would not be popular anymore with the granting, the Green Communities group I think it may be actually called Green Communities in the state government that issues these grants. So,
David, is it possible for you to maybe scribe a paragraph to the Finance Committee that is better than just we're going to get people pissed off that would be more tangible about what you just kind of referenced to, about the impact of, and I'm not saying I'm for or against this. I just try to gather all the information, the facts, and understand, try to make sure we're communicating, impacts of decisions, impacts of actions, and I think that that is an impact if this doesn't go through. But I'd like, something from you to show
I'm
that.
sure we can make it more, but there isn't much more to say there, except that we would lose the grant, and we would not be viewed favorably for future grants. I mean, that's not something that's a rule. It says right now we have a good relationship with green communities, and we're able to leverage that to sometimes buy cruisers, buy other vehicles, get grants for other purposes. And so, anyway, we're at an advantage doing that. Can I say a couple things about the HVAC project?
If you can get them done quickly, I promise Christie we'd be wrapped up in a couple minutes. So,
Okay.
so if you can do it like you're trying to sell us like life insurance. Okay.
So if we went with a natural gas solution here, it would probably save us a few $100,000 in cost, not very much. And the operating cost would be essentially the same. With the grants, we actually significantly save money, way over what it would cost for natural gas, if we could do natural gas, right? But we would save money. We save money considerably over that alternative. So without the incentives, it would cost a few $100,000 more. With the incentives, and we get, by the way, there's another set of probably incentives from the utilities, which are not nailed down yet. We would probably lose those as well. So those are not going to be much smaller than $1 million. But we're trying to leverage everything we can here. Secondly, is you guys can expect, I expect, Scott, that you'll be asked shortly, because I know there's preparations in the works for it, to be able to present to you, have this project presented to the committee, maybe at your next meeting. So,
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm not actually old enough to have experienced this, but I've lived in enough old houses to know that there was a huge spike in electric costs. So in the 70s, people stuck in those baseboard heaters and then pretty quickly replaced them because electricity went up 100% for some people. That's part of my hesitation for installing an air source heat pump in my house. Is that something that we are at all concerned about? I understand all the reasons we want electrification. I'm a little nervous about moving over to a single fuel source.
so I have personally done the calculations for this, and they're almost identical for gas and heat pumps. We have to also realize that electricity is a conduit, not a source, right? So that we have, there's a little bit of a difference there. Natural gas is really the source. So it's almost identical. And I've offered, and I'm happy to do it, I've offered to Scott to give you guys a backgrounder on electrification. If you're interested, I can do that at any time. I have made presentations to other groups, not necessarily in town, about how to do commercial heat pumps. And so I'm happy to do that anytime you guys are interested.
I appreciate that, Dave. I think if I did that, I would want to bring in a second person that would also be an expert, so we wouldn't just get sole source.
In that case, you can just do them. I mean, I'm not doing anything.
Okay.
You don't have to use me if you think I'm
All right.
biased. Just do them. You get the same
Yep.
answer.
All right. Any other questions on this? Corinne?
I'm sorry, why did we apply for a grant for a project that had already been voted down at town meeting?
Well, we have to replace the HVAC system in this building. The HVAC system in this building is problematic. It's reached the end of its life. It doesn't work properly. There are regions of the building that are overheated. At the same time, there are regions of the building that are underheated. So we have to do that. And we have a requirement in town to not use fossil fuels. And thirdly, applying for the grants, so considering we have to replace the HVAC, saves us many hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we lost the vote by one vote at town meeting. I understand that, right? But a significant majority, 66, but not 67%, were in favor. And a number of people in the meeting said we didn't give them enough facts, and actually, I completely agree with that, right? We should have had that in a separate article with a separate presentation. But, you know, the reason is we have to replace the HVAC in the building.
All right. Let's see. I think the main liaison report was the school meeting. If anybody feels the need to liaison right now, raise your hand. Otherwise, I'd like to keep to my promise to Christie. So.
I drove 5 hours for this. This is fantastic. I motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
We are adjourned.